there's almost been this like bipartisan
Mhm.
collective feeling,
Yes.
right?
I
But
totally
this
agree.
is this incredible response of people being like, fuck your narrative, would continue to get us to be brainwashed into thinking that, oh, it's this side's fault or it's this side's fault. It's
Totally.
like, no, 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 we're not falling for that shit anymore. And but it like gave me chills because I was like, it's happening. Like, oh my God. Welcome to the Art of Woo podcast with your host, Leigh
The
Erickson.
Jupiter Saturn square,
Mhm.
you're in the heart of your, Sagittarius, three planets now. I guess it's just two, but right in the middle of that stuff. And Jupiter now retrograde, going to go back to your Mercury and so on and so forth. So that whole thing is absolutely makes sense that you're lit up with generating content. My
Yeah.
experience about generating content is that I go through periods like I've actually been obviously Jupiter over my own sun.
Mhm.
I have for about the last 10 days or something, almost every day I recorded like a half an hour to an hour Zoom thing, just myself, just
Nice.
stuff that I felt like I needed to,
Get out. Yeah.
yeah, just like I had some inspiration. And my experience over the years, because I've been generating content pretty steadily for 10 years or so around astrology, is that I'll go for like a month or something where I just can't stop. I've got to say a lot. And then I'll go for like 2 months. I don't
Just
want to,
kind of,
yeah,
yeah,
leave me alone. I don't want
going
to, but
inward.
yeah. So I just
Yeah,
go with it. I don't question. I just let it fly.
totally. And I like, I've kind of told my, again, like all of what I'm doing is mainly for like my Patreon and sometimes YouTube, but I've like tried to like warn people to not warn, but like just kind of explain like I never want to set myself up for this like rigid schedule of
Yes.
like pumping things out because it's
Yes.
like I just don't
It's not
function
natural.
like that.
Yes.
um and yeah, because I never want to get sucked into this trap of just like making content for content's sake and just
Yes.
like pumping out trash that's just like,
Yeah.
what is this? Because I just like feel like that's kind of this weird time frame that we're in too right now, where like, there's all these people who are making careers out of social media and like, whatever, digital creators. And it's like they build up this like expectation from their audience of like something new every single week. And it's like, I guess you might get into like a rhythm of things, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I also like really want to just like always respect like the sacredness of creativity. And
Lovely.
that's why it's like being a graphic designer too is like, I don't know how
Yeah,
Remy does
I
it.
agree. I agree.
It's
Doing
like,
it on demand is incredibly
I
difficult.
mean, he's gotten to the point where he's so good at, well, putting aside any of his personal, like, putting his heart into it. It's weird. Like you kind of have to like remove almost like your soul from the, I don't know, from the process, because you're just bound to get obviously constructive criticism and feedback, which is always healthy to a certain extent, but like sometimes you just get so broken down that you're just like, this is nothing near what my inspiration came from. And it's just like,
I mean, with you, you have to go back to six planets in fire. It's wait, no, it's six. It's four in Sag.
four, and
That's
then
six.
I think Aries
One in
and
each.
Leo.
Aries
Yeah.
and Leo. I would think of it that and this is true for everybody, which it often, often things we feel are universal. But
Mm-hmm.
for you in particular, you are like this, if you think of like each person is like a cell in the brain, some is a cell in the arm,
Yeah.
everybody's got a different function. You
Yeah.
got to go with that creative, inspirational flow. That's part of who you are. So
Yeah.
please
That's
keep
why
doing
I don't know.
it.
I didn't really succeed so well in the graphic design world because I was just like, I
Well,
don't know.
the let's call
It's
it
such
the
a,
yeah, the on demand, I'll
yeah, the,
for you for somebody else. But when it comes to like doing your own work, and I actually thought about this morning. I was just thinking about
oh,
you.
it's
I
funny.
was thinking how the whole thing with the YouTube thing. like a lot of people, again, they would be like, well, if I don't immediately get a response, if I don't have this amount of people or whatever, because they're like calculating it perhaps from an earth standpoint or whatever. But you
Mm,
just had like the intuition, like I've got to say these things, I've got to get out there and start the process going. And I that's what I resonate with that. It's
mm,
like you say, it's a sacred process.
mm. And I've been just, really trying to open my throat chakra.
Well, and
That's
opening
like,
your whole, what is the
yeah.
message? Like you can't be authentic unless you
Hmm.
be authentic first and see what comes. You can't
Hmm.
like backdate your authenticity. So
Totally.
first you just
So
got to
true.
jump in and see what comes and then refine from there as opposed to the other way around. So
Totally. And really just one last thing on that idea. It's interesting. I was actually kind of reflecting on this recently too. I feel like since I've kind of started just like talking into microphones and whatever, I feel like it's actually helped my art just like be in flow more because for so long, I would get so hung up on the fact that what I was creating and like the art, the paintings that I was painting and whatever I was making just was not like enough. It wasn't like powerful enough, or I wasn't fully expressing, I don't know, my position in the world, or like, does that make sense? Like it
yes,
didn't, it just, I just, while all of this like extraordinary, yet also horrific and like just these crazy things are happening in the world all the time.
yes,
And then it's like, I was over here just like trying to paint pretty pictures.
pretty pictures. That's
Like, I feel like there was this weird disconnect of like my actual connection to the rest of the world. And it made me feel like it made me almost personally devalue my own art because I was like, this doesn't convey a message enough about how I really feel about what's going on in the world. I don't know if that makes sense, but
definitely
I
makes
think
sense.
because I've like opened up this other outlet of like expressing, I don't know, just like my conversation with the world, more or less, even if it's just like me and you, or, five people are listening or two, or none. It's like helped me like not put as much weird pressure into what I'm creating all the time. And also I've just been using astrology so much as like inspiration for my art, which is like a whole other, I should show you. I just made a little like a little kind of digital illustration for the full moon in Gemini.
You want to show it? Let's show it now. That's a good moment.
Oh,
Segue.
it's on. I wonder if it's loaded, if it's
Unless
like
it's too
out.
hard to get to.
So Gemini full moon.
Oh, wow.
Kind of weird, right? So this is like using my iPad. So
Yes.
it's like a whole new like
Yeah, new mode.
style that
Yeah.
I'm able to kind of convey. I don't know. I've been getting
Wow.
more into like actual illustration lately and like I
Wow.
don't know. It's kind of just a fun, simple. I mean, this
It
took
is.
like an hour or two, not even.
Yeah.
So this is like a
Yeah.
fun little
I like it.
um
It was
yeah, digital.
unexpected. It was not, I didn't know what I
Yeah,
was expecting, but it was,
right? It's very different than my
yeah.
typical like watercolor,
Yeah.
um,
Very cool.
like the Pluto and Aquarius or yeah, Capricorn thing. But it's kind of just mostly just to like post something and then or like post something about the full moon and then have an image with it. But anyways,
Free for all.
um well,
So, but
so
but back to your, like, I think a good question to ask you is when you thought about, hey, I want to cover the transits, like
mhm.
to me, there's a gem of, or a germ of something there that like you want to kind of keep yourself oriented, right? Or how would you describe what the value is of like knowing the transits and stuff? So that could
Well,
help.
the value. I was going to say the reason why I'm constantly wanting to do it. I think it's literally my Neptune and Capricorn. It's like connecting the dots of like the dream, like, the ethereal, and then like bringing it into form and structure. Like that's exactly like why I feel like I'm um trying to, create this like mold out of the clouds.
I like
I don't know if that makes
brilliant. I
sense.
love that.
I was
That
like, what it
your
feels like.
gesture
It's
said
like,
it
get it,
all.
come here. Um,
Yes.
but
No, no, that
but the
makes total sense.
value, I
Yeah.
mean, we talk about this so many times, but yeah, the value again, I mean, it's just like, I think for one, I know for me, even
Yes.
long before I even started, kind of calling myself an astrologer, and everything, like I got so excited to look into any insight to just kind of, help me navigate the current energies and, you know, the current sea, the waters that we're in right now.
There's a Neptune thing again. So
Yeah, yeah.
because so to me, one of the things that I peruse is that I have what I would call a distinctly spiritual element in my life where
Hmm.
meditation and connection with source, which is not directly related to astrology. And one of the
Hmm.
things I peruse is what is the relationship between the insights of astrology and that sort of ineffable or indescribable connection that is kind of timeless. So astrology is all about time. And one
Hmm.
of the ways I would say it, that to pick up on what you just said, is that astrology is very describing like what energies are happening like in the moment.
Hmm.
Like we
Hmm.
really get to tune in,
Yeah.
because when we're not tuned into them, it kind of feels like the energies are affecting us anyway. So
Hmm.
when we can feel it and see it, or get a feel for how it's moving, to me it actually creates like a timeless feeling, because you're seeing the part of time that was affecting you, but you didn't know what it was. Or it's not like we know exactly what it is, but we can see,
Right.
we can experience the currents of it, and then we're less
Hmm.
like kind of you know bound by it. That's how I would say it.
Totally. And it's also just, alongside of all that, aside from like the personal feelings, like it's so interesting to see what's happening in the collective. And especially, I mean, like, I can't say this enough, but like, we are just in such wild times
Wow,
right now.
it is.
And so we can't not talk about this, first couple of weeks of Pluto in Capricorn.
Yes, in Aquarius.
Sorry,
No,
Aquarius.
no, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
I've just been so used to saying that
I
lately.
know. I
For
know.
20 years. No.
Yeah, 18 years.
Yeah, 18.
So no, 16, 16. It was
Yeah, it was kind of
2018.
quick, huh? It was a
Well, yeah,
quicker transit.
Pluto varies from Pluto is actually ahead of Neptune, faster than Neptune in its
Hmm.
movement, because in my birthday, we're almost exactly sextile. Uh,
Mm.
Neptune was a little ahead. Now Pluto went into Aquarius,
Hmm.
a full 6 months before Neptune is going into Aries. So
Right.
Pluto actually went ahead. And then when Pluto was in Cancer, it's like 30 years in one sign. So it's a
So
very regular
interesting.
orbit. So it
Yeah. Really irregular. Crazy. But so I was actually going to kind of ask you your thoughts on this. And it's probably all relative, but I was going to ask if you thought this was more of like a Pluto in Aquarius thing or more of this like kind of Mars retrograde and like opposing Pluto for a little while here. But this recent like wild murder of this
oh yeah, yeah,
the
yeah. The
United
United
Health
Healthcare.
CEO,
Yeah.
speaking of just like the collective and, kind of just like some crazy stuff already happening
Yes.
since Pluto entered Aquarius, I can't help but like obviously look to the cosmos about this because for one, I don't know. And I want to hear your perspective about
Sure,
it.
you're
But
welcome to. You can
okay.
put something
I
else.
just I can't help but think like, for so long we've been, Pluto entering Aquarius is all about like power to the people, right? And or that's like a big theme at least. And it's
That's
like
fair.
this, I don't know. It's like this is like a very strange, like symbolic way of portraying that. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not like here
yeah. No, nobody.
endorsing murder,
Yeah,
but
everybody should.
this
It
is a
already
very yeah, that, like, I mean, if you're
it
on the internet
happened, so
right
we
now,
can't.
it's
Yeah, no, and a lot of people.
wild out there.
Yeah, a lot of people were. I mean, I was
And the
explaining
response,
the
that's part of
response
it. The
was
response
already.
to this is the
Yeah,
whole, like, that is what's almost more like phenomenal about this
definitely. No, people
setting,
are
right?
dying all the time. So if a couple things just specifically on the response is, first of all, there was like, I don't know if you heard Bill Burr, he was one of the ones who
Yeah.
that early, like, we have the biggest drug cartel in the world. These guys are gangster, and so on and so forth. So that was that.
Yeah.
And then, but one of the more kind of interesting ones was that there's this group of people on the internet who help track, crime and stuff like that. And when, but like, because their data, like hackers and ever who will help reveal something if something goes on or whatever.
Hmm.
And when someone asked, like, can you help us track that? This was when it first happened. Can you help us track this person down? And they were like, no. There was a bunch
Right?
who just were like, sorry, this one,
This guy gets
we're not touching
like a
this.
freebie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Free
here's the one
pass.
I got to tell you. I'm glad you asked this one because, um, because I've been studying astrology for it's almost 40 years now. There are certain things, even though I tend to stick with you and I have talked about this is my approach is a synthetic meaning to the signs. So the synthetic meaning of Aquarius is that it's the transpersonal air sign. And
Hmm.
to me, that gives me a lot of insight into what it
Hmm.
is because the transpersonal part means it's the people, as you say, like power to the people. And
Hmm.
the air quality is that it's a lot about communication and about equality and these kinds
Hmm.
of things.
Hmm.
Just a reminder, we've talked about this, but the Constitution of the United States was written during Pluto and Aquarius, whereas the revolution itself took place in Capricorn, but the Constitution was Aquarius. So it has to do with this idea of fairness, democracy, and not with Democrats, but democracy
Right.
and globalism and so on. So one of the things that from my study of traditional astrology, and I just realized this like 2 days ago, is one of the areas of life that is related to Aquarius is insurance. And I know that sounds crazy, but why is that?
Wow.
Because insurance is about spreading the risk of something, which is in this case, health or anything can be insured. So it's about spreading risk across a large group of people. So in some ways, um, insurance is an Aquarian phenomenon because it's the idea of instead of every individual being totally responsible for what
Further
happens,
out. Yeah.
you get what we reap what you sow and all that,
Hmm.
and
We all
we all
feeding into the
share
same
it.
pot, and
Yeah,
it
and therefore
takes
no
care of us.
one person.
And that's a great
It's a great concept and it
concept
works, right?
in theory,
Except
but
when corporations or whoever are using it to the detriment of individuals by taking the one principle, which is shared risk, and then trying to chip away at that by saying, well, there's certain kind of risks that we're going to eliminate
mhm.
until, and I don't know if you saw these numbers, but United Healthcare has the greatest number of denied claims. Did you see that? So it's like,
Yeah, and I think that was a huge kind of
yeah, it goes from like
inspiration.
10%, 10, there's a couple companies, 10, 15, 20. United Healthcare, 37% of their claims are denied. So they
Yeah.
are they are the leader in denial of claims.
Hmm.
So anyway, that hit me like 2, 3 days ago. I
Yeah.
just was like, I didn't think of it right away, and then I like it's one of those in the shower things that
Hmm.
Pluto, just like when Pluto went into Capricorn, right at the beginning, we had the banking crisis, we had the
Hmm.
huge
Like,
thing.
right. It's crazy how,
Almost synchronized. When it
yeah.
first goes in, I think there's sort of like an effect that because it's a new energy, there's
Hmm.
a couple things. So I think this was definitely a Pluto and Aquarius thing that what it does is it points the way to the evolutionary task ahead. So the
Hmm.
evolutionary task is to make our society more equitable, more
Hmm.
oriented towards the common good
Hmm.
instead of just the hierarchy or the whatever the companies that are in power. It
Right.
orients it towards, and in particular, an area that you and I are both very interested in, public health. The
Hmm.
biggest problem with what was happening in these last 5 years with COVID and
Hmm.
before with big pharma is that they're not operating any longer in the public health. They've grabbed the resources and the laws and stuff like that to their own benefit, and they're neglecting the effect that it has on the public. So anyway, that
Hmm.
was that was the big one. Now to uh, loop this in with the Mars retrograde. So
Yes.
Mars just went retrograde like a week ago. What I don't remember the date of it. What's
December 6th. Yep.
December
So
6th?
yeah,
Yeah.
I have it all
Yeah,
written
there
up
it
here.
is, a week. So it, it's hardly moved at all still. It was at
Hmm.
6 degrees. It's only moved like a few minutes of a degree, but
Hmm.
it is the real opposition to Pluto, which is close enough.
Hmm.
It's I think it's
It
in
was
2 weeks or so.
November,
No, the
the
first
when it
one
was
when it was
actually,
going forward, but now Mars is going right
oh, right. And it's going back and going to be
backwards.
opposite
And so
again.
the next opposition,
Right.
the first opposition to Pluto was
Was
right
no,
before Pluto went into Aquarius. It was
yeah, November
Pluto
3rd.
November 3rd. And so now this next one, which I have written down somewhere here,
Yeah. When
I'll
is
look it up.
that?
That's the kind of stuff I track all the time.
I
Is
forgot. It's like obvious. It's going to go back
Yeah,
again,
it's going
opposite. Oh
retrograde.
my
So here
gosh,
it
how
is.
could I forget?
Mars opposite Pluto is January 3rd. It's is the next one going retrograde. And then Mars is going back in Cancer and it'll be there for a while. And then April 26th is when it turns back around again and
Okay.
going forward, it's
Going direct. Okay.
it's been in 3 Aquarius. So that's when Pluto will have gone pretty far. April 26, 2025 is the third pass of it. But for in some ways
Okay. When it's direct again.
when it's
But
direct,
but Mars will be going direct, I think, in end of February,
it's
right?
exactly something
Okay.
like that. Exactly.
Okay. But then it's going to be passing
Pluto
Pluto
one more
opposite
time.
up
So yeah,
opposing
they
for a
are
third time.
third time.
Wild.
I
Okay.
know. I know.
Got
So
it. Okay.
this
So
retrograde one,
January 3rd
January 3rd
is
is
the next opposite. Okay.
opposite at 1.5 degrees of Aquarius. So,
Okay.
we are, obviously part of what with Trump almost, whether who knows exactly what it was, but anyway, potentially close to getting getting himself
Assassinated. Yeah.
hit. But the
Hmm.
whole thing of um, the kind of looming threat of violence that I think we agreed right after it happened that one of the best parts of him getting elected, besides some of the good effects of RFK and Jay Bhattacharya and all the good things, is that it really, I think, brought down the temperature. I think if the Democrats had gotten elected again, it would have been a pressure cooker. It would have just been
Yeah.
like, holy shit, what's going to happen? Are there going to be
Hmm.
riots? So, in a
Hmm.
real way, it brought down the temperature. But then there's still this kind of underlying, like, okay,
Tension.
what is going to happen? And him
Hmm.
doing stuff like the other day he said like he threatened Liz Cheney and the January 6th committee and like you should be prosecuted for doing that. It's like he's so he's basically like an old guy
Extreme.
who's just like throwing stuff out.
I've got all the
No,
power. Yeah.
you can't prosecute
Yeah.
people,
Here we go again.
members of Congress who are
Yeah.
starting a committee. Sorry, that's no matter how powerful you are, you can't do that. So anyway, I think that whole Mars in Leo in particular, and this I would say this has a relation to your creativity, kind of because it's not all the way to your moon, but it's still
Mm.
close. Um,
Yeah.
but the thing about Leo is its creativity, but it's also um, dictatorship.
Courage.
Like
Yeah.
Pluto and Leo was Hitler. that's when yeah, Pluto was in
Whoa.
Leo in 1945 for sure,
Yeah.
but it went in around 1938
Wow.
or so. So the rise
Really
of
interesting.
Hitler was
Yeah.
Pluto and Leo.
Leo kind of, seems to embody like the ego,
Exactly.
it just like
Exactly.
inflames the ego
Yes.
and just is
Yes.
like
And
almost
in
kind
this
of
case, it
to a
was an
narcissist.
individual, Hitler, coinciding with the bruised ego of a country, Germany, who had been overly the people. I've talked with a few people who studied that period. I haven't studied it too closely, but one of the things that caused, in a way, what happened was that in World War One, Germany was defeated, and then instead of, and this is similar to what the United States did with Russia, when a country is defeated, if the countries that win are what's the word? Considerate, thoughtful, I don't know, whatever
Mm,
word you want to use, in
yeah.
evolutionary, they reach out and they say, okay, you lost the war, but we're going to help you now. But if
Mm,
if they basically stomp on them and say you lost, now we're going to, you know,
take over. Yeah,
kind of like
everything.
rub it in, then it kind of creates this backlash. And so Germany
Yeah,
was
ripple effect for
exactly
years and years and years. Yeah.
years and years. So Germany was like defeated. And then Hitler came and said, we have to resuscitate the greatness of Germany. And
Hmm.
so it was all of that was that Leo kind of,
Hmm.
the ego of an
Hmm.
individual, the ego of a country in a sense. And I think what's also significant there is that when Pluto, when it goes into Aquarius, I hadn't thought of this till we were just talking about it. So it's always, I think, good when you're trying to understand a planetary placement is to look at the opposite. So
Right.
that
Hmm.
was the point, right when Pluto went into Leo in 37, 38, whenever it was, that we can kind of look to that as like a polarity to what's happening now. So it's
Was sorry to stop you really quick. Was Mars opposite Pluto at that
no, no,
point?
Mars,
Oh,
Mars,
okay.
Mars will always go opposite Pluto once every 2 years. So that in itself is not a
Okay.
super, this is a core principle of astrological kind of calculation is how often
Yeah.
does something happen. So Pluto being in early Leo is once every 250 years. That's extremely rare. But
Hmm.
Mars every 2 years will go opposite Pluto. What's rare about this particular one is that Mars has gone retrograde just as it passed Pluto. So
Okay.
we had the first one, now we're having the second one, then we're having the
Hmm.
third one. So we have three
Hmm.
passes of Mars opposite Pluto that makes it extraordinary.
Hmm. Gotcha. Do you feel like the just this Mars retrograde has anything to do with this recent, healthcare murder thing
Well, that's what
at
I'm saying.
all?
The first
Okay.
thing is the Pluto is the underlying condition, which is this needs to change. And
Hmm.
we're entering a period where there's going to be a reevaluation of the fairness of things.
Yeah.
Think of
Okay.
Aquarius as being the main issue is fairness. In Capricorn, the main issue is solidity or stability.
Hmm.
So when we had the banking crisis, what that was threatening was stability. And so
Hmm.
whereas when some planets go, like when Jupiter goes into a sign, it's like, oh, let's put more energy into that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Pluto goes into a sign, it's like, I
It's like
don't
fuck
even
shit
say
up.
yeah, it messes it up. It
Yeah.
causes some kind of deep
Blow it
structural,
up in your face. Yeah.
yeah. And then that sets the stage for we really need to figure out how to do this better. So
Hmm.
it's an evolutionary force.
Hmm.
So the Pluto in Aquarius sets the stage for we have to start considering this issue of fairness now that we have got that we've stabilized some of these big corporations. There was some evolution about how we were going to do government and economy and stuff for the
Hmm.
last Pluto and Capricorn. Now we've got the big institutions. We've got Amazon. We've got these huge
So many.
companies,
Yeah.
and now we've got to adjust them so that they will not be out of control monsters that are sucking the life out of our
Hmm.
out of our society. So that's the underlying condition. And then Mars comes, and whatever planet goes and touches Pluto is going to be the current focus at that moment for
Hmm.
the thing that the area where that evolutionary
Change and
underlying
progress
condition
needs to
is
happen.
going to
Yeah.
happen. And so
Oh
in
my
this
God.
case, it's somebody who's taking an aggressive action, but also an assertive action. You could call it, it's kind of both. Some
Hmm.
people are looking at that guy and saying, that was his thing. His manifesto is like, somebody has to do something or else this will go. So I would say the Mars part of it. But remember that Venus just went opposite Mars like yesterday.
Hmm.
Venus just went into
I
Aquarius.
felt that one.
It went,
Ryder and I did.
oh, there you go. Okay.
Fighting over
Care to
the dumbest,
elaborate? Yeah.
dumbest stuff. Just, I don't know. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like the dumbest fight ever. Like just to have a fight almost, it felt like it was just out of nowhere.
There you go. Well,
I
it's
just
not
didn't
as,
feel like doing something and he did and so stupid. And I'm like, oh yeah, Mars and yeah, literally. And then my
I,
friend was texting me about this crazy relationship problems she was having too. And I was like,
yes.
well, this is interesting. And then I looked and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Ah, good, Lee.
Yeah, I know.
I know. This is how
But
we've
so
done
yeah, that
astrology.
is
That
interesting.
I want to emphasize that just again because we've had this conversation. Being an astrologer, the first criteria and I call my stuff living astrology, the first
Hmm.
criteria is that you live it, you feel it,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
experience it. If you're just trying to be intellectual and say this means that and so on, you're missing the boat. If
Yeah.
you have to go through it and you go through it for 20 moons, 5 years, whatever it is, like you go through
Hmm.
the cycles enough times and then you start to and one of the keys is because this is related to us doing a cosmic weather report is the report is not the same for everybody. So
Hmm.
if you think
Totally.
about it, on our planet right now, there's incredibly beautiful blue skies and warm weather somewhere, and somewhere it is
Butterflies.
20
Hmm.
below zero, and somebody
Hmm.
is, risks death if they go outside without the right clothes.
Hmm.
So in a similar way, the astrological stuff is more the better way to think about using it rather than prediction, which I think is questionable at best, is
Hmm.
it's really helpful to understand events as they're happening or after
Hmm.
they happen to kind of
Hmm.
give context to.
Hmm. Totally.
And what you just did is like that's Mars opposite Venus. Yeah, I get that. And then it makes you feel better because if you didn't do that, you might put a mark on your relationship. You might say, "Oh,
What
well,
is wrong?
we
Yeah.
don't get along or whatever." But because you can
Hmm.
see it, you're just like, "Well, we're just acting out these energies and then you
Hmm.
can let it go."
Hmm. Totally. Um, yeah, and it was yeah, it's funny too. I also looked at my I'm gonna edit this out, but like just like my menstrual cycle too. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, that also makes sense. I'm like, see,
That
this
I
is
don't think
yeah.
you have to edit it out. Remember, that's
Yeah,
the
that's
idea.
true. That's why we're
That
doing
is that
this.
is exactly what
I'm
it is.
like, and if Ryder used this as well, like
He
how
might
helpful
have
would
gotten a
that be?
clue. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, so Venus is yeah, quite
It just passed
literally just
because
past
Venus is going
seven
forward.
degrees
Yeah,
and yeah, Mars is 5 degrees, but just
almost.
about yeah, opposite
Yeah,
they were
it
just
was
opposite.
yesterday. It was
Hmm.
yesterday. And so that
Yeah,
or the night
in
before, whatever.
Aquarius.
But it's so the Venus opposite Mars is, I think that the if you were describing the whole internet thing that we were talking about, the Venus and Aquarius part was how everybody started discussing it and relating. The
Mm,
Mars part was the lone guy that took the
that
action.
just did it. Yeah.
And yeah, and the retrograde part to me is where retrograde can indicate things that are internal or going back over the past. So here's a guy
Hmm.
who felt he had been harmed. That's where it's not
Hmm.
our job to adjudicate that, but he had this back injury and probably wasn't compensated what he thought, so on. And so the retrograde is him saying, I'm going to go back over my sense of injustice and I'm going to do something about it. for me, we're one of the productive uses of Mars retrograde is to complete some things that you wanted to complete, but there was too much going on. So you go back and put some energy into things that have been kind of waiting for attention. So
Mm-hmm.
almost like a time of harvesting things that were, one way I would think of it is like if you were saving some stuff and then you realize, okay, now I can use that energy that I was
Mm-hmm.
storing or saving, and I can make use of it. And so for me, your realization about your art and your creativity and kind of coming into your own that way is also related to Mars in Leo,
Mm-hmm.
close, kind of activating your moon. And
Mm-hmm.
then the Mars opposite Pluto on an energetic level, like we can look at it in a social level, which is what
Mm-hmm.
happened with that guy. But on an internal level, think of it like Pluto in Aquarius is like one of the things you're synchronized to is you're seeing, and you and I both are seeing Pluto in Aquarius as a time to really go into a new level of being creative and of integrating our social participation with our creativity, not
Mm-hmm.
just do something to make some money, but to,
Mm-hmm.
really um, synchronize those two things. So if you
Mm-hmm.
think of then Mars going opposite Pluto is like, let's work really hard, which we're
Mm-hmm.
doing on this project to
Mm-hmm.
kind of build something foundational that will allow us to continue to be creative. So to me, it's not just like we could make some money doing this particular thing, but if it does nothing else but give us some foundation to work from, so that
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about a chart, we have our own chart, or we can start to build these core principles, then it's well worth it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And just like on that note as well, I feel like, just Pluto entering Aquarius in general, as a collective, it
Yes.
really kind of just feels like we, are kind of working towards like building this whole new world in a sense. And I know that's like a really big, large
I
statement, but it
concur. Yeah.
really feels like that. And it just, just to summarize, I guess, or go back over what you were just explaining too, of like, how are we going to like take all these things that are need improvement, and how are we going to as a collective like go forward with this and make change and yeah, just create a whole new better improved collective world,
Yes.
um that actually serves the people instead
Right.
of robs them.
Oh, and I think, and
But
this going back to your comment a few minutes ago, the whole structure that got created with like influencers and the first, think of it that the internet as we know it, social media really started in Pluto and Capricorn, right? Because
yeah,
2008 is
yeah.
kind of when this whole new phase came up. So
Mm-hmm.
think about it, that the first people that did that, Joe Rogan, not
Mm-hmm.
first, but the ones who have emerged as like the big players.
Mm-hmm.
Him,
Yeah, it's crazy how long he's been
it
podcasting
is.
for.
And
It's like
that's
20
probably,
years now.
yeah, well, that's
That's
probably around the time he really
amazing.
started
Yeah.
doing his
Mm-hmm.
podcast. And then,
Mm-hmm.
you and I have tuned into Brett Cooper, but that she really is
Yeah.
from what's his name? Ben Shapiro
Shapiro.
was
I
another person.
Oh, that reminds me of another
Oh, yeah.
note, but
Go
you
ahead.
can continue. Oh, okay. Well, so you know how Ben Shapiro is so clearly on one side,
I know.
and he really, really has got a narrative he likes to
Yes,
push.
he does.
Uh, and obviously he has a large audience. People have been following him for years. He's got like a whole network, right?
Yes, yeah.
So back to probably Pluto and Aquarius, maybe Mars and Mars retrograde, of just like reassessing things in
Yes, yes.
general. There's been like, I don't know, I've seen things surface about people's, oh, this is like a whole new, this is like such a great point. There's, since this CEO murder,
Yes.
there's almost been this it's created this like bipartisan
Mhm.
collective feeling,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
Bring us
so there
together.
was something that was literally like screenshots of comments that I saw in response to a Ben Shapiro video about this whole topic of the healthcare thing.
Yeah.
And, clearly this guy, he's just got a narrative. He's got his mind made up. And I don't know exactly which video it was, but it was like the left and the left, the left, the left, left. And there was all of these comments of people being like, fuck off, dude. It's not even about that
Yeah.
anymore. Like,
Yeah.
this is so much more important than like, oh, it's the left's fault. Or like what? Like I don't know how he has managed to like twist this into a one-sided story. Plus, I'm pretty sure this guy was like a registered Republican. Not that I don't it's like I don't
Yeah.
even think that shit
No, no,
matters.
you're exactly. I
But
totally
this
agree.
is like this incredible response of people being like, fuck your narrative with this like, oh, continue to get us to like be brainwashed into thinking that, oh, it's this side's fault or it's this side's fault. And it's
Totally.
like, no, 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 we're not falling for that shit anymore. And I'll have to find it, but it like gave me chills because I was like, it's happening. Like, oh my God. Like people are finally waking up to the fact that it's not our brothers and sisters, it's like we're arguing with the wrong people. We like don't get angry at,
Yes.
each other over
Perfectly
this.
said.
Like,
That you
and
got it.
that I feel like this is this kind of revolutionary
Upswell.
feeling that that we are entering in, which like, oh my God, my heart is like ready to explode because it's just like power to the people. Like, I don't know. It's pretty incredible. I can't believe I like spaced out on that. I'll see if I can pull it up and I'll send
Well,
it to you.
this is
But it's
you.
like,
As usual with our conversations, you're exactly tuning into what I'm talking about, which is we go
yeah.
from this hierarchical thing, which is,
Hmm.
first of all, Joe Rogan went from being unpopular to now there's certain people that have made him into like the devil itself because he
Oh,
was
totally.
partially
So
responsible for
polarized.
getting Trump elected or whatever. And then
Hmm.
same thing, Ben Shapiro, even though he's sort of on the same side, but I completely agree. That's it. Versus the Capricorn thing is there's these big, kind of bastions of these certain opinions that
Hmm.
people identify with, and then they make them super popular. And the whole idea of
Yep.
influencer and all that. The
Quite literally
Aquarian thing,
influencing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. The Aquarian thing is now we've got to spread it out. We've got to make it more
Yeah.
horizontal. It's not, it's about, and you and I talked about this a couple of months ago, it's about more
Hmm.
about these smaller communities of people that are
Hmm.
willing to not just shove their opinion out into the world, but are actually trying
Yeah.
to make some stuff happen. But you're absolutely right. That's what I'm referring to.
And
Yes, go.
well, I'm so sorry. I don't want to cut you off.
Not at all. Never.
All right, all right. I feel like I kind of interrupt you a lot. So I'm trying to be very,
Oh,
when I watch the recordings, I'm like, damn it, I did it again.
I
So
do it too. So
I'm just
we're
trying to
good.
be mindful.
Yes.
But the other like huge layer about all of this is like not only is it, this kind of power to the people energy of like, us coming together as a collective, but almost even more importantly, it's like I think people are finally like using their own discernment and listening to their inner higher self or their intuition or their own opinion or right or wrong.
Yes.
Like this whole like influencer age, I feel like has almost like run its course already. I
Yeah.
don't know. Like, is it too soon to say that? Like, it seems like it's still such a new thing, but I feel like we're getting to this point where it's like influence. Like, how much of your own perspective of the world is even your own pure, thought process? Or is it just this like outside noise? And again, we are still in Jupiter and Gemini. So it's like, my God, like the overflow of information is just
Yes.
kind of
So I would call
nonstop right
this,
now. But yeah.
I would point to now to Neptune when in this part of
Mm,
the conversation, because
okay.
remember, Neptune is going, the Piscean, the good part of Neptune and Pisces is the world is kind of recognizing almost its unity. Like we're realizing
Hmm.
that what goes on in one place is affecting everyone. But the negative
Hmm.
part, and we talked about this a couple of times ago, is this like everything getting homogenized, like
Hmm.
everybody's trying to solve everybody's problems in this kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
so Neptune is, we're talking now, this is the next big shift is March, I think it's March 30th of
Hmm.
the coming year, which now is very close. It's 3.5 months away, is
Moving
Neptune
into
into
Aries.
Aries.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about when you talk about this kind of, some people would say, what is intuition and higher self? They're
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
represent but it really is the cusp of Pisces. Is what happens is you connect with sort of like a higher spiritual principle, whatever that is to you,
Hmm.
but in preparation for the intuition is really when you start relying on your own. And when Neptune goes into Aries, however, 164 years ago, it was the Civil War,
Hmm.
163. Actually, it
Hmm.
will, it's so close because it was April, I think it was April 16th or something. It's almost happening right at the same time of year, which is strange too.
Hmm.
But the first shots at Fort Sumter in 1861. But
So
anyway,
crazy.
Neptune going into Aries this time,
Hmm.
hopefully we've gotten out some of this, kind of collective insanity through all these events, this
Hmm.
attempted assassination, this. And so instead of it being like a war where we're fighting at each other, it's more like a recognition that people need to attend to their own situation, like
Hmm.
stop obsessing over what everybody else is thinking. And
Hmm.
it's more like follow your own intuition, be your own person,
Hmm.
learn to hear your own voice.
Right. Make
Just
your
what
own
you,
decisions. Stop being influenced. I mean, it's okay to be it's
yeah.
like all to a certain
Well, it
extent.
served a very important
Um,
purpose at
it
one point.
has absolutely totally. I mean, like everything in life, there's a light and a dark. Um, I was gonna say, do you think that Neptune, having been in Pisces for so long, has to do with almost our like over like cancel culture that was like happening, that was like so crazy for a while there, and like it's almost like we had such a large amount of empathy for
Yes.
everybody else that we were just like, we were just so empathetic to like literally everyone and everything that
Yes.
was getting underserved or whatever, which again all serves its purpose, but like it had gotten to this
So
point where
far.
it was like, you're canceled, like saying the wrong thing, like you offended me, you
Yes.
offended this person or this population. Like
And
you're
that was
out.
and that was one of the things that Saturn does. So Neptune
Okay, yeah.
has been in Pisces for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So but Saturn only entered a year ago or a year and a
Mm-hmm.
half ago. So
Mm-hmm.
Saturn, when it comes into a sign, says, okay, we got to clean this up. This has gone
Yeah.
too far. We've got to rein this in,
Mm-hmm.
discipline
Gotcha.
ourselves regarding this, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Before I just want to add one other thing on this, because when I was hearing you and I was like feeling I was like you were on stage at a rock concert,
I
and
was so excited.
yes, we were like, but I just
Yeah.
want to point out about that Venus is, in some ways, Venus is one of, it's one of them. We all have different influences, but you are a Venus person. You're a woman. You are, a beautiful woman and
One Taurus
passionate,
rising.
enthusiastic, and so on and so forth. So you carry that archetype. That, just to distinguish that, like different people, there's what your chart is, but then different people in the collective carry a certain archetype. So right
Mm-hmm.
now, as an example, like Donald Trump, he's carrying the Jupiter archetype of success, but
Mm-hmm.
that was more his early life. Mostly he's carrying the Uranian archetype of like
Mm.
just, shaking things
Disruption.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
that. But anyway, because Venus is one of your kind of things that you wear in the world, you could think of it that way. Venus conjuncting Pluto is, and then going opposite Mars, is kind of a
Mm-hmm.
moment when you're experiencing, you can almost think of as Venus goes through the other planets. That would be something I would have you watch, is like, because so
Mm.
the next planet will be first, Venus is Pluto. Now then Venus is going to hit Neptune in a month and a half. So
Mm-hmm.
as it's getting closer to going into Aries. So anyway, that's just I just
And
want to throw
Saturn.
that in.
Saturn first, right? And then
Saturn
Neptune.
first.
Yeah.
See, there you
I
go.
just have the chart.
You
I'm
got me.
cheating. I
No,
have the
no,
chart
I
over
don't
here.
care.
So
I don't care. I'm just going to enjoy
but
the
yeah, so
moment.
that's yeah,
Yes.
totally.
Yes.
Well, and I'm a Taurus rising, so it's like kind
That's
of
right.
considered my
Venus
ruling
rule,
planet.
and
I
it's
feel
your
very fortunate in the sense that I would consider Jupiter and Venus
there
my
it
two ruling
is.
planets. Um
Venus and
so
Jupiter, Jupiter because it rules your sun.
Jupiter Sagittarius, yeah, and then Venus with
I,
Taurus.
I, I
But
think I just felt the
cool.
need to defend your Venus because the other day you were
I
down
was
on
like mad at
you're
it.
like
Yeah.
damn Venus and Capricorn always making me feel guilty about everything and
Yeah, and just kind of stealing the fun
yeah
sometimes, but
yeah
I'm learning to love it.
uh,
Oh man, that
yeah
was a lot. Yeah,
yeah
I mean,
when we do it
yeah,
based on spontaneity, it's
yeah,
always more than if we
it's better
schedule.
for
So
sure.
that's why I was
Yeah,
like, let me add it.
totally. That was great. Yeah, so yeah, just Mars has got a lot of weird energy. Yeah, so and then it's not going into Cancer until January. So yeah, Mars and Leo for the rest of December. What was the other? Sorry, before we kind of
Wait,
end this, wrap this
wait.
up. It Jupiter and Saturn.
Jupiter
What
squaring Saturn
squaring Saturn
on the
on Christmas
24th,
Eve?
Christmas Eve.
Okay,
So,
so that should be
when you see it,
interesting.
when we looked at that other chart, we looked at my program,
Mm-hmm,
Jupiter is going retrograde. It's at
mm-hmm.
15 and a half. Uh, Saturn's at 13 and a half. So they're already very close square. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
looked at this in a natal
We're
chart,
almost in
they're
the yeah.
already square. And I
Mm-hmm,
think the square part is what when you talked about like you're getting excited on working on the program that we're all you can feel it like when
mm-hmm,
it's Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter's the part of like I'm excited, I'm enthusiastic, I see where it can go, and Saturn's the part about and it's in sync with what's actually happening with the resources we actually have
mm-hmm.
and the timing that we've put into it. So Jupiter square Saturn is a great time for kind of accomplishing
Getting at yeah.
making a tangible move, tangible progress in whatever each person is doing.
Mm-hmm. And just kind of as a collective too.
Yeah.
Again, right back into this whole kind of new world we're creating.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty wild. And Saturn is in uh
Pisces.
Pisces and Jupiter and Gemini. Yeah, it's an interesting combination.
Yeah. This
Mm.
when Saturn finally, and today's Sun is conjunct your Saturn over
Mm-hmm.
the next 3 months as Saturn first squares your Sun, then squares your Saturn, then square. We talked about that like
All of my
that,
planets. Yeah.
all of your planets. This is
Mm-hmm.
a very, very productive time for you. So
Which is also so annoying because it's typically like the holidays and we're all just
yeah,
like taking time off and
yeah,
resting. And I'm like fired up right now. It's
I
so,
get it. I get it.
I don't know. It's
The thing
fine.
about
The Gregorian calendar.
I just want to exactly. I want to remind you about how your fire energy works. That there's times where you will make a crazy amount of progress in 1 hour or one day.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that of learning to be kind to yourself and work in your own rhythm is
Mm-hmm.
realizing that you're not the person who sits there and hacks away at something every day, blah, 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 blah. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, what you'll do is you'll make a big leap of progress, and then the
Mm-hmm.
next step is to just relax and let it manifest and kind of allow it to what has already happened to take shape. And if you're too concerned about, well, what do I do next, what do I do next, they call it digging up the seeds. You plant the seeds and you're digging it up to see whether it's growing or not.
Mm.
The
Interesting.
classic,
Yeah.
like, don't do that. Just realize that once you have that inspiration and you make that move, a lot of times that's all you need to do, and then you can just kind of relax and enjoy watching the progress unfold. It's my
Amazing. No, that is so helpful. And the crazy thing is, too, I'm going to go outside of astrology, but like human design, I know I've talked about this a little bit,
sure.
but that almost exactly embodies the energy of a projector, which is what I am. It's so crazy that you just said that. And this is this is almost like what my argument with Ryder was last night, was just like my energy
Yeah,
level. Like we kind of made like loose plans to do something. We were going to do something. And then I kind of was just like in a shitty mood because I didn't really want to go out. I just didn't
yeah,
want to leave the house. I was like, I'd
yeah,
really honestly just rather like take a shower and like stay
yeah.
home and go to
Yes,
bed,
yes,
you know?
yes.
And he just got all mad at me. And I was like, you just don't understand my energy. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I was like, but it's my energy.
Well,
Um,
one of the things with you guys, we talked about this a long time ago, is he had his one planet in Sagittarius is Neptune. So
mm,
when he gets the Sagittarian bug, like let's go,
mm-hmm.
your Saturn kicks in and is like, come on, because you are, like as much as anybody I know, you want to get out there, snowboard, do
Yeah,
this,
I feel like I'm plenty of
but
active,
you do
but
plenty of it. But once in a while, when your Saturn kicks in, which is where it was
mhm.
yesterday and today,
Oh my,
and it's time for you
see?
to, yeah,
I just need you to give him a call and translate all of this to him, because coming
you,
out of my mouth, it doesn't
I
work.
get,
It's just like,
I get it.
goes in one ear out, because I'm just always trying to talk it like this, and it's like, yeah, whatever.
You're getting there.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and with human design too, like so there's 4 or 5 types. I can't. There's manifester, generator, manifesting generator, projector, and reflectors. And just really quick, yeah. So projectors is what I am, and we're only like 20% of the population.
Yes.
Majority of the rest of the population is generators and manifesting generators and manifestors, and they have a ton of energy. Like they're the ones that are able to work 9 to 5 jobs. I mean, I don't think
Yes.
anyone really should have to work a
No,
9 to 5
no,
job
we
if they don't
agree.
want to,
Yeah.
but they have the stamina to be able to do that. And
Yes.
it's like, and
Yeah.
like the rest of us have been just trying to like fit into this like cookie cutter world that we're living in. And it's like our energy is like at a different level. And it's not that we don't have a lot of energy, but it's like just what
It
you were
moves in
explaining with
different.
like the fire. Yeah, it's like when you have like the reserve, that's when you can kind of like go. And but you need to like really recharge. And there's like a lot of other added layers to it too. But anyways, that was just really interesting that you said that, because that was what I was trying to explain. Woo
We
woo
all
shit.
need a rider in our lives. We need somebody to
I know.
keep
And
us
it's like, well,
grounded.
it's just, and what you were saying, a while back too, of just like how, we're all kind of like the cell in the body. Like we
Yes.
all have like a specific role to kind of fill in this like harmonic, in a perfectly harmonic, not
And a
perfect, but
healthy
like
heart
healthy,
whole. Yeah.
harmonic world, right?
Yes. Yes.
And we kind of all play a crucial role. And so if we all kind of were more informed about all of these attributes that we are kind of born with, and like our gifts and our strengths and our weaknesses, we would be such a, more
Some more. Yes, that's
productive, not productive,
the
but you know what I
Aquarian
mean?
vision right there.
Yeah, we're all like the piece to the puzzle. And it's like if we could all just kind of do what we truly are fired up about, I feel like that's kind of the key. It's like if we're just like following our passions, like that's kind of the answer. But it's unfortunate because of this like world that we live in, so many of us are just forced to do jobs or whatever that we just don't want to do. And that's why we're kind of a little effed up. But
I'm
anyways.
voting for you.
Ah,
I'm electing you the next whatever.
hell yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're on fire today. That was enjoyable. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyways,
Thanks for
so
including me on your ride.
hell yeah. Thanks for being spontaneous and last minute with my invite.
That was great.
Full moon in
Full
Gemini.
moon in Gemini, and the moon will be conjuncting Jupiter at this time tomorrow. So just because it just went in,
Right. Pretty
that's
cool.
moon conjunct.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, good stuff. Awesome.
Awesome.
Okay,
All
cool.
right.
Have
Ciao.
a good one.
All right.
Thanks.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.